Welcome back to this special highlights program. Last month, President Obama, of course, made that historic speech addressing the Middle East peace process and the way forward to prevent discord growing between the Muslim world and Western powers. It was greeted with pretty widespread support in many countries, though some were keen to point out that after the words must come action. This is what Saeb Erekat, the chief Palestinian negotiator, said to us the morning after the speech.
I think today it's a very critical juncture in this region, Sir David. I don't think it's about armies, navies, air forces. It's not about wars. It's about the idea that was put in stage by President Obama yesterday. The idea of a Middle East that can live in peace and security, the two-state solution, democracy, women's rights, and so on. I think if this vision breaks down, Sir David, I'm not exporting fear. But I can tell you from now that the lights will go down in this region. This region will go in the hands of bin Laden, extremists, violence, and counter-violence. And people like us who want to push this region towards the path of democracy, peace, stability, human rights, the rule of law, accountability, and transparency, we will disappear.
Tony Blair has many different titles, but one of the most important is the fact that he is a special Middle East envoy on behalf of the quartet of United States, Russia, United Nations, and the European Union. He felt that the Obama speech was an important step forward.
I think the single most important thing to realize about American policy today is that the new president, the new administration, have made it a key strategic interest of America to have peace in the Middle East, and that includes having an independent, viable Palestinian state. So I think this was a very big moment, a decisive moment for the region and for the wider world.
Yes, when we talked to Saeb Erekat on the day after Obama's speech, he said at one point, and I quote, "I think if this region breaks down, Sir David, I'm not exporting fear, but I can tell you from now that the lights will go down in this region."
Well, I think everybody knows that there's a broader question as to what the direction of this region is. Is it one towards peaceful coexistence where people of different faiths and cultures live together? Is it one that's at home in the 21st century, economically, socially, culturally? Or do the extremists gain from the fact that the sensible middle ground has failed to make progress? Do the extremists capitalize on that and end up pushing the region into chaos and disintegration? Now, I hope very much, obviously, that we are in a position where we can avoid that, and I think there are some good and interesting signs recently. I think the fact that the Lebanon election turned out the way it did. We had the election in Kuwait, incidentally, that was very important, and the election of the first women MPs there. We've had the situation in Iran, however confused and difficult. Nonetheless, it's clear there are many, many people right across this part of the world who want a future of peace and security and coexistence.
Have you detected any sea change in attitudes since the Obama speech, or is it too early to see that?
I think there is a great sense of hope and expectation, but I also think, as President Obama knows very well, that people will wait to see what now happens. And as I keep saying to people, the important thing is to understand that President Obama doesn't need cheerleaders, he needs partners. He needs people who are going to help him achieve what he wants to achieve. Now, I think when he set out in his speech in Cairo the vision for the future, the overwhelming majority of people in this region and around the world can buy into that, buy into it, agree with it, want it to happen. But it's not going to happen just because he wants it to happen. He needs others to want it to happen too. And that's why, in this particular instance, the Israel-Palestine issue, we need to make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Finally, one of my most recent interviews was in many ways one of the most remarkable. For years, Morgan Tsvangirai led the opposition in Zimbabwe to the brutal regime of President Robert Mugabe. This led on one occasion, as you may recall, to him being savagely beaten by Mugabe's henchmen. We've talked to him several times over the past 3 years, but in his first interview with me since becoming Prime Minister in an inclusive government under Mugabe, he made a series of surprisingly optimistic claims that made headlines around the world.
Inclusive government has performed beyond expectation. It has consolidated itself, and on a number of benchmarks, it has performed extremely well, and I'll mention a few. That we have managed to arrest the hyperinflation condition from 500 billion% to 3% currently. We have reopened schools, we have reopened hospitals. We have begun to give the people of Zimbabwe not only hope but confidence that the future is bright and that this process is irreversible.
And how's the working relationship with Robert Mugabe?
I'm the last one to defend Robert Mugabe's record in the past, but we have since agreed that we will work together for the national interest, and since then, we have set the agenda of trying to pull our country out of the precipice and try to deal with those issues that are essential. And at a personal level, I think that. There is, although there are differences from time to time, we differ respectfully.
Because there was this quote here from your Minister of National Healing and Reconciliation, Sikai Holland, who said this week that Zimbabwe is facing fresh violence and that some members of ZANU-PF, quote, have a list of people that they will kill, unquote. Basically, you don't think that's true anymore. Is that your message to the world today?
Well, I don't know where she is getting that. But you know that we are emerging from a traumatic period in which violence was an instrument of cohesion and control. So I'll be the last one to confirm that those incidents either are happening at individual level or in the majority of cases there is no evidence that there is a general campaign of intimidation and violence in the country.
Well, there's no doubt that you personally and the people of Zimbabwe have the good wishes of the world at this particular time, and you particularly, really, because in one sense this has been an inspiring year for you, but in one sense it's been a terrible year in the sense of the tragic accident that happened to your wife, your dear wife. Some people say that they think that that was an assassination attempt on you. Do you think that?
Well, there was that speculation, but I want to confirm that I was involved in that accident, and as I stated earlier, at the time of the accident, I genuinely believe that this was an accident, and that there is no basis, in spite of the general atmosphere of suspicion, I have no reason to believe that it could have been an attempt on my life.
Morgan Changparai. Well, that's it for this special programme, looking back on some of the highlights of Frost Over the World from the first half of the year. We'll be back in September for the 4th year of Frost Over the World, with more headliners, more top-name guests, and we hope you. Goodbye for now.